everyone, and welcome to the February Health and Education Committee meeting. Have a full committee tonight as we usually do, and we need to get the minutes approved, and if I could get a motion on the minutes, I'd appreciate it.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, and seconded, and no discussion I wouldn't imagine, and all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Again, terrific start. Community care report, and Ms. Shelton is passing them down as we speak. And I'll give you a second or two to look over them. And it says right here that Mayor Burgess presided and called the meeting to order. So Mayor Burgess is here. So anything, problems to report or good news to report, it's always good news. And
well, you'll see that's a very routine set of minutes there, and they're just doing their normal good job, so I don't think there's anything really to report of any significance.
Move to approve the minutes.
thank you, Commissioner Phillips. Need a second?
Second.
Ms. Cook, thank you. Any discussion or questions?
I will say this on our bid that come in for milk and bread and such as that. Community Care is using that bid, and just on milk alone saved them $3,000 for a year. 1 cent adds up.
Yes, it does. That's certainly good news.
But the bread, I think, was $1.20 for a 20-ounce loaf, and they met our price, $1.79.
Any other comments or questions from anyone?
They're doing well.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. And, okay, we need to vote on this? I think we do, don't we? We have a motion to approve on the floor, and it's properly seconded, so all in favor, please say aye. Aye. And any opposed? And the answer, of course, is no. Special projects report. Okay, good news. We have no report. No, that's really not good news. I talked with Ms. Jolly today and also Ms. Nolan, and there is no new information in this report, and so they are not with us this evening. However, we do have to vote and approve it and keep it there in front of you if you would, please. However, we do have experts in the room, of course, and if you have a question, we can see if the mayor or anyone that knows the answer. But I think we're in good shape here. There's no new information from last month. Do I hear a motion to approve the report?
Motion to approve, no new information.
Commissioner Jordan, okay, thank you. And a second? Second. Commissioner Allen, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. And any opposition? There is none. I'd like for you to keep that report, however, handy, and perhaps just turn in advance to page 2, if you would.
Are we going to do health department before?
Yes, we are. We're going to do her right now. I'm sorry. Ms. Garrett, if you would come on up, and I believe we're going to do health department at this point, and you didn't think we'd forgotten you, did you?
No.
Well, Ms. Shelton did not, I can assure you.
Well, we need to vote on that.
On what?
Your special projects.
We just did that, didn't we? Did we vote on that? We did not vote on that? On the special projects report? We did, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay, we're in good shape. Okay, then Ms. Shelton and myself, we'll get things in the proper order here. Mostly her. I think Ms. Garrett has a couple of things that we need to look at tonight, her usual excellent reports. And Ms. Garrett, I know you have a small part of your budget is county money, and we're going to look at the budget request too. So if you go ahead with your regular report, if you would.
Okay, the first page in your packet is just the regular January report with our patient encounter and inspections and all that. We seem to be right on track for January, which is what we expect to see. No real differences there. Still continue to do a ton of birth certificates at our facility. We doubled that number of birth certificates from last year. The good news is another agency, the DMV, is going to start offering those as well. And that should be coming soon, so that'll help. They'll be give people 2 places that can get their birth certificate. So that'll help. Any questions about my report? Before I go on to the other.
Let's get the report first. Any questions? Okay, I need a motion to approve. Commissioner Phillips, thank you. Second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Turner, thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, and there is none. And we, generally, we look at the Health Department budget and pass it along to the Budget Committee. And I understand, and I'm correct in assuming, I believe you told me that the mayor is in full agreement here, and we're in good shape here.
Yes,
But-
sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, Ms. Garrett.
So as you can see, the first page in your budget packet, 55110 budget, is fully funded by the county. And the increase that we had was just a slight increase in utilities. We had a slight increase there. And we also have some home visitors that are going into people's homes that really need some cell phones. So we increased a little bit in communications so that we can have our people be safe in the community when they're out visiting. And that's the only differences there.
Well, the differences add up to about $6,000, don't
Yes, sir.
they?
And some of that is longevity
Not
pay
even-
and things that are
Yeah, out of your control?
out of control, yeah.
Not even quite that amount.
Can we take all three of these as one vote, or do we need to vote on them individually?
I believe we can do all three of them.
Okay. And on the second one is also 55160, which is fully funded by the county. And that's exactly staying the same. That's our dental services. Helps us provide supplies and things that our dental clinic needs. No increase there, exactly the same. And the last one in our packet is 55190. This is the budget that is completely reimbursed by the state. And there's no increases in that, just the standard stuff.
You have people that goes out for home visits, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you all require, do you need the GPSs?
Right now, we've been okay to be able to find most everything. We try to do online before we leave, like a MapQuest or something to that effect, and that usually does it. Yeah, the cell phones could have it added, but it's an extra cost every month, and we think we can do it with the
MapQuest.
With the MapQuest type.
And then too, they can call if they're lost.
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Ms. Garrett?
What's the difference in salaries in the Code 110 versus 190, the state versus the...
The 190 are the salaries that are completely reimbursed by the state. I don't understand the question, I guess.
No, I just wonder what the difference was. Why are they in two different places?
Historically, there has always been the majority of the positions provided by the state. And the county has, over time, has had us have that smaller number in the 5510.
So it's additional pay for overtime or some other types of things?
It's a different set of employees completely.
Yeah.
We have certain identified employees that we have taken responsibility for over the years. That's just our little subset.
Okay, such as, just an example.
There's 32 employees, I believe, in this one, and there's 8 in the other. And it's like the janitor, an LPN, a clerical staff. That's what you guys provide.
Okay.
The state provides doctors, nurses, the higher salary.
Okay. And those cell phones, are they distributed, the ones you mentioned, are they distributed to these people for their use full-time or?
No, sir, they're just
turned
for
back in?
during the day, and then they check them in at night to a charger.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions, comments? This will, of course, be passed on to the Budget Committee, where Ms. Garrett will present it to them, I guess, next month, I guess. I need a motion to approve, hopefully.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Phillips, thank you. A second?
Second.
And Commissioner Allen, any discussion? Normal, okay. Second,
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Cook.
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan.
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan.
yes. Okay, Mr. Gill, thank you, Ms. Carey. Well done as always. Mr. Gill and Mr. Sandvik and Mr. Clardy, looks like will be presenting an amendment tonight. Want to call attention to the fact, obviously, that we have numerous guests in the audience tonight, and we're delighted to see them. Many of them, I suspect, from Eagleville, since I know some of them. Some of them since they were children. Commissioner Jones is with us this evening, and always good to see her. And Principal Holton, Assistant Principal and Athletic Director Bill Tollett is with us, and I hope I haven't left anybody out, but welcome to all of you. School Board Member Wayne Blair is also with us tonight, and it's always great to see him.
I got one.
And Mr. Oden, who I left out last week, and sorry, Mr. Oden, please forgive me. The Master of Curriculum is with us tonight. Mr. Gilbert, before you get started, you and I just had a brief discussion, and I'll just lead you right into this. Rutherford County itself, the county as a whole, all employees, we had a terrific year supporting United Way. It was just outstanding, I believe considerably more than last year, and I believe the schools led the way, and I know Mr. Evans talked to me today. Well, I know that he is in possession of an email, which I will eventually see. But at any rate, I know you wanted to kind of address that just for a minute.
Yeah, you blindsided me slightly, and I hadn't done a lot of homework, but I did have a discussion with James Day. There was a United Way luncheon today where they recognized contributors across the county, and the school system was the third largest contributor in the county. Actually, don't mean to embarrass anybody, but we actually contributed more than Nissan. And the two that were ahead of us were Riches and Publix, each of whom the company matches the employee contribution. So in retrospect, I think our folks maybe were the highest for contributing workforce in the county. The top school, either city or county, was Blackman High School with respect to contribution, and I don't know where the difference was here, but Smyrna High led the high school division, Smyrna Middle led the middle school, and Walter Hill was the top contributor among the elementary schools. That includes the city. They had 100% participation at Walter Hill. They're doing great things out there. So needless to say, we're proud of what the employees do. Much of the credit goes to James Evans. James has really worked at this. He's come up with some spirited ideas for participation, like having Jersey Day at the central office and other contests. And, you know, I knew that worked on young kids, but it works on adults too, obviously. So we're really proud of what everyone's done with respect to United Way. We'll also, pursuant to the mayor's request, which I thought was a good idea, we'll have something on our web page here in the next 2 or 3 days to basically outline what I've just talked about.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Rutherford Countyans are generous, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Children as well. You have a request tonight, which is no one has any idea what this is about.
Well, obviously, we're here. One of the things that we'll talk about is the design funds for Eagleville School Addition. Each of you should have in front of you a handout from us. And the Commission's Budget Committee has asked the board to recommend a funding source for the design of both phases of the Eagleville School additions. The savings from the Oakland and Whitworth Buchanan Middle Schools should cover the $350,000 needed to proceed with design for both the Eagleville additions. The Budget Committee would like the board to proceed with the design phase for both Eagleville additions so that we can have firm costs for these additions when the bids for Stewart's Creek High School are open and the Commission is finalizing the 2011-2012 construction and debt service budgets. Plan discussed at the Commission Budget Committee on February the 10th, 2011 involved using any savings when the Stewart's Creek High bid is awarded as potential funding for Eagleville. The $350,000 in design fees for both Eagleville additions will be funded internally within the building program until the end of project cleanup amendment is brought forward for the Oakland and Whitworth Buchanan Middle School projects to the board and commission. and we're recommending that you approve the use of $350,000 in internal funding from the Oakland and Whitworth Buchanan Middle School project to fund the design fees for both Eagleville additions until an Oakland and Whitworth Buchanan Middle School end of project cleanup amendment is brought forward to the board and commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Discussion from the committee. You might look at page 2, notice the amount, unobligated amounts in both the Oakland Middle and Whitworth Buchanan. That's why I just told you to leave it at page 2 there on your project report. So there's clearly money to do that with, but comments, discussion, questions of Mr. Gill, or?
Isn't this the same money that the same funding source that we used for the Stewart's Creek design? And now do we not need that because we've approved the Stewart's Creek funding? I was thinking it was the same place that the Stewart's Creek funding came
Where
from.
did we take the 1.3 for Stewart's Creek out of fund balance? Another project?
It showed us new elementary school at that point
Yeah.
in time, which is the same thing it's showing right here, so.
Yeah, I think something Brown's Chapel, just different sources that we had.
I just want to make sure we're not spending the same money
Yeah.
over and over again.
Well, the way this is set up, being on budget, I was, of course, I think most everybody was either there at the meeting or saw the meeting. We get both phases designed, and we can, accordingly to how the money comes in, we can fund one or two, or, all or nothing, or either one, and have the flexibility. It's got to be designed. This is money we've already got in fund balance, we're not out borrowing this money, so if we get it started this summer or next summer or whenever, we'll be good to go. So I don't see a downside to doing this.
Right. I don't either. As you say, it's exactly what we did with Stewart's Creek. We decided to proceed with the design, and when we saw it feasible to do it, we moved forward with it, and I think we're doing the same thing here. Might add, I know one thing that was of concern to some commissioners was that, maybe one day Eagleville wouldn't be a high school. I want to state emphatically, there's never been any discussion at the board level about closing Eagleville High School down. It's never been suggested by a single board member. I don't know how that stuff gets started, but occasionally it does. So our plan is to leave Eagleville a K-12 school. I might also add, I was looking at their enrollment figures. They have 130 more students than they had in 2005, so they are a growing community. I anticipate they'll continue to grow. Now, with respect, I think Commissioner Jordan brought the issue up about how we'll bid it. We'll bid it, what, for phase 1 and phase 2 will be an alternate. You want to explain that, Mr. Clardy, real quick?
Yes, we'll go out to bid with it, and we'll use bid both phases. But phase 2, which are the 10 extra classrooms down on the east side of the school, will be bid as the alternate. And hopefully we'll bid it with a for the base bid on the alternate, which is phase 2, plus a deduct for doing both of them together.
Kind of like what we mentioned with Stewart's Creek and the stadium projects at once, and we get to come back and make that decision at that point in time.
That's correct.
Could we state again, just public record, what's in phase 1 and what's in phase 2?
Phase 1 has the existing cafeteria renovation, which takes the stage out, removes it, and expands the cafeteria into that area. It also has the 400-seat auditorium. It has 12 classrooms, which will be science labs. It has a band and choral room. It has offices and restrooms. And storage. Phase 2, and phase 1 will be built between the existing building and the gym. So that'll just be kind of a continuation of the building in that area, the new gym. Phase 2 is down on the east end where the portables are now, and it consists of 10 classrooms and restrooms, also, for very little money, we can, since it's so high off the ground to get it up to grade with the rest of the building, we can use the bottom of that as a basement. Finish the basement, don't complete the walls or anything, and then turn that over to the Boosters Club to complete for locker rooms and that type of athletic activity. Had a question asked about sewer. Eagleville is working now to try to get a city sewer in out there. I know they are in the design of it and trying to locate the money. Our existing sewer has some capacity in it, which our existing sewer will not be affected because the students that are in the 14 portables that are out there now will just move into the building. So really wastewater is not a problem. Then when the city gets the sewer, we will turn our existing state effluent permit that we release into a stream out there over to the city of Eagleville, and they can use it with their new sewer system, because the state, very difficult to get any effluent release permits through the state at this time.
I went back and watched the February meeting where this was presented a year ago, and I just want to know if this is still accurate. Based on what was presented then, they said that this phase would absorb all the students that are currently in portables, and the phase 2 10 classrooms were to absorb future growth. Is that still the case? I didn't know if the numbers had changed significantly or if that was still the case.
So how many total classrooms are we adding? 20?
It'll be 22.
22.
Plus the choral and the band room, which is considered a classroom also.
Okay.
24.
What's the total number of students from K through 12 out there now?
Just under 800.
Okay, and you expect a 3% increase?
They've grown about 120, 130 students in 5 years, so I don't know. Late in the day, if I can figure that out or not.
My thinking is,
That's
are we
rather
building
random.
enough rooms? Right. If it's,
I'd say this would be a good start, for sure.
and that's not what I want. I want it to be adequate in it.
Well,
I don't
yeah,
want them to
yeah.
come back next year and say, we need more space.
Yeah. Well, it's like I've said multiple times, it's hard for us to project 5, 6, 7 years out. I think if they got 22 rooms at Eagleville, they would be delighted, and I think that would accommodate those students for, even if we picked up another 100 over the next 5 years, this addition should accommodate them.
Okay, when's their goal of getting sewer out there? Their plans? I know it's hard to,
I don't know that, Ms. Cook. Do you know, Ms. Clardy?
I know they're working it very hard. They're looking for a funding source. They have the design. I would expect that the completed sewer project could be 2 to 4 years off.
you see where I'm going on that? Because I've already walked through Laverne Sewer and what we had, how the expansion went, and we were ignored. And that's why I don't want Eagleville ignored. I want us to plan if we can do it. And it's easier to do it early than it is later.
Right.
Because you can take almost as portables, make a good down payment on it.
Right.
You see where I'm coming from?
I do. Well, I guess we could go back and do a phase 3, but as I said, I think phase 1 and phase 2 will take them 4, 5, 6 years down the road rather easy.
Follow up on that, you see, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You see 4, 5, 6 years down the road, you see high school in the Rockville area?
I've gone back and done some homework on that. For example, as I said, we built Oakland, Riverdale somewhere, opened them in '73, I believe. We opened, the next high schools opened were the two in Smyrna, Laverne. That was in '87. We went 10 or 11 years before we got Blackman. We went 5 or 6 years and got Siegel. And it looks like it's going to be 9 or 10 years. It'll be 10 years before we open the next one. So, I guess it's according to what happens on Highway 99 out there, but I'd say it'd be hard to, I wish they could have it 5 years, but I also realize the financial help might strap this
It'll be 2020 anyway then.
I would think so.
2013, by the time the Stewart's Creek
Still.
opens.
Yeah.
7 years minimum, and we could be 2023, 2025.
Could be.
I think the commission's being a little bit more aggressive than even you guys asked for, combining these two phases, or at least having the opportunity to combine these two phases. Because as Commissioner Allen just said, phase 2 was for future growth. I mean, we may get to the point 6 months from now, whatever, and decide phase 2 isn't justified, which is a question
Right.
I'm expecting to get back answer from the school board.
Right.
Do we have the students to justify the second 10 classrooms? And I would hope you all would know that when the time comes to make that decision.
Right. You know, one other comment with respect to Commissioner Cook's question. A big sum of this money is obviously going for auditoriums, enlarging cafeterias and all that. When you come back, say you come back in 5, 6 years and say, well, we need a few classrooms. The cheapest thing we can do is add classrooms. So we will have expanded the core to where they can accommodate, 4, 5, 6 more classrooms. We've got an auditorium, we've got chorus room, we've got band room. We've done much of the core needs, and I wouldn't think it'd be much of an issue someday to come back and add a few classrooms if it's needed. We've done that across the county. Smyrna Elementary, Christiana Elementary, Smyrna and Laverne High School. So it's ongoing, and it's obviously driven by where students move and where subdivisions pop up.
Well, I'm gonna go on record saying this is going to be a problem in another 5 years when they get the sewer in. We're gonna have problems out there. Believe you, Eagle, I know what I'm talking about. We had 30 portables not even fire inspected at Laverne in elementary.
Yeah.
Mr. Gill, I have one more question on the, with this plan, we're also talking about expanding the core. And one of the criticisms that I've heard about it, and I think I know the answer, I just want you to say it, address it out loud, is that, we couldn't expand the core of some of the other high schools. That was the reason we justified Stewart's Creek. Is the thing that's different here the fact that we've not exhausted our land resources at Eagleville? Is that why it makes sense to expand the core here, or maybe it didn't at some other high schools?
Well, actually, we have expanded the core at the other high schools. We're kind of
Are you maxed out? I mean, is that the difference, is that we're not maxed out at Eagleville?
We're certainly not maxed out at Eagleville.
Okay.
But we're hamstrung at Smyrna and Laverne with respect to expanding the core. There's probably no way to expand that cafeteria. I don't know where we'd go. We'd have to reconfigure the kitchen and all that. Laverne, we're already into the parking lot, so that became pretty much a no-brainer for me.
Right.
And another thing, you got to be very careful about, you build a high school for 2,900 kids, you're going to be hauling kids long distances for many, many years, and you're going to drive your transportation costs enormously. So you always have to be, I think Mr. Odom reminded me one time, Mr. Carlton, you say, you put a school in the wrong place, you pay for it for 40 years. And that's true. So you got to be careful about building super high schools, or you'll be hauling kids all the way to the other side of Murfreesboro to fill up Smyrna. So I think what we did was a pretty sage move the other night. And yeah, we can't do any additional core expansions at those schools. Yeah.
What we're talking about is approving the money for the design phase of it.
Mm-hmm.
We did that with Stewart Creek some months ago.
Right.
When do you expect to come back with the proposal to go for the build?
Yeah. Stewart Creek, the design should be complete 2.5 months. We'll go out for bid for 45 days. Sometime in June, the bids should come in, and hopefully we start at the end of June. Now, simultaneously, we hope to go out, when's the next county commission meeting? The 17th of March?
March.
Hopefully, if you provide money for the design or you approve what we're doing 4 months out, so you got March, April, May, June. We'll be wrapping up the design phase pretty close to when we'll be getting the Stewart Creek bid in. So we may know then, hey, that we got it substantially lower than we anticipated. There's $5 million, $6 million, $7 million, $8 million we could use towards that Eagle project. We could get started, we said in October or November, and we could have it open by January of the end of December of 2012 or January 2013. In other words, mid-semester instead of the following fall.
We've got to wait and see where these Stewart Creek bids come in first. I mean, we're
Yeah,
just
that's my thinking, yeah.
keeping our options open to this point in time, where
Right.
we can proceed on.
Right. And obviously, you guys have the final say-so on that.
I guess what I'm driving at, Will, is when we were talking about Stewart Creek, the high school there, some months ago, we approved the design phase, but we're real cautious about how that would affect the property tax rate for all of the county. And when it came back in a favorable perspective, then Stewart Creek was a go for the build.
Right.
And I'm expecting this to probably be the same way. We'll do the phase of it, and or the design phase of it, and then if it comes back and revenues are down, and it's going to create a guaranteed increase in the property tax rate, then that will create a whole another set of discussion. It doesn't mean that it won't go, or it doesn't mean that it will go, but it means that it'll give us the opportunity to say yes or no in that particular phase.
Right.
But the first thing to do is to get the design phase out of the way, get it in the cycle, and then we'll see where all the other bids come in
Right.
and how that might fit.
Agreed.
I think
Makes
at the Budget
sense.
Committee, we're pretty comfortable that we can withstand just under $50 million without a tax increase.
Right.
And hopefully, these bids will come in significantly under that, where we can just more or less squeeze this in on that same tap.
Right.
You know, which I think we've got the numbers to justify we can handle that. Now,
Right.
the bids come in at $48.75 million, and we've got to stop and take a breath and think about it, you know, and stuff. But at least this gives us our options.
Right.
And if it comes in at $41 million, and we can, in my opinion, probably proceed on. You know?
Absolutely. And that's our hope,
Mhm.
all of our hope. I'd also add, I want to throw this out there again to show the goodwill that we're putting out there. We've also said that we're going to work diligently to cover the opening costs for Stewart's Creek. So that would be another avoidance of a tax increase, and hopefully that'll, lay a little more flexibility with respect to getting Eagleville done. But we do know there are strings attached.
Any other questions or comments? We've got the people here that know now. I need a motion to approve this design plan. Mr. Gill has made it, so let me read it. You want to read it?
Either
You
one.
can go ahead. You're much better reader than I.
To approve the use of $350,000 in internal funding from the Oakland and Whitworth Buchanan Middle Schools projects to fund the design fees for both Eagleville additions until an Oakland and Whitworth Buchanan Middle Schools end of project cleanup amendment is brought forward to the board and commission.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? I assume you're ready to vote, as Dr. Bullen used to say. Michelle?
Commissioner Allen? Aye. Commissioner Cook?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes. Thank you so much, committee. Do you have another amendment, or do you have something else?
I believe so, I know.
Yes, we have something else we want to, maybe you had something else. Commissioner Turner requested some discussion tonight on David Uri, and I'll just turn it over to Commissioner Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gill and everyone involved. I just wanted to follow up again when we had some discussions a couple of months ago about some of the projects that were in the 5-year plan. Let me make sure everyone's I've got one. That we were having with the 5-year plan for the school. And David Uri project had been mentioned, needing to move their office to a different location as opposed to where it is now. And I had some concerns about whether student safety was really affected at the schools, and were parents comfortable with that? Were students in a safe place? And I talked to Chairman Barnes, and he was confident that the school board felt that that was the case, that there were good safety measures that were already in place. And actually talking to several parents, they felt comfortable at that school. As far as where the office was now, my question was with this, moving the office, has there been any other discussion of bumping that up to a more recent part of the plan than the bleachers or anything else? I didn't know if anything had been moved yet, but I wanted to discuss if there was a way that we were going to look at bumping that David Urey project up.
Yeah, first of all, the bleachers are on hold too. It looks like we don't have a revenue source for the bleachers right now. And what we typically do for these renovations is to use this, what we call the major capital project dollars, which comes from the 5 cents that we dedicated a couple of years ago, which is equivalent to about $2 million of school money. And we put that towards major capital repairs, which is what David Urey is. So we have no money to move it up. However, our intention is to start October the 11th, as you see, in October of 2011, with a design, and to work at and to start construction by 2012, June of 2012. So much of it has to be done in the summer.
Right, with the students going.
We start 2012 and it'll be ready by 2013, right, Mr. Clardy?
Yes,
Yeah.
if not sooner.
Yeah, and perhaps even sooner, yeah. That'd be our hope.
Opening of the school season in 2013, in the fall of
Yeah,
2013,
yeah.
okay.
And, you know, if we could bump it up, we would. We've taken these one at a time and moved throughout the county, and it's just taken us a while to get to David Urey, but that's the plan. You can see we've dedicated close to $700,000 to the project. And if we had $700,000 somewhere else, if somebody knows where the $700,000, we'll start on it sooner.
Right.
But that's probably the best we can do.
Well, and that's helpful, and again, I was able to talk to several of the faculty members over there and some of the families that are involved, and they're comfortable. I mean, they're living it every day with the way the setup is now, and that was my initial concern was there a safety factor there for the children and even the teachers at that school, and they seemed to feel confident that there was not, and that this was acceptable to them as far as the timeline. And I told them, I said, hey, if you live it and I don't, I'm not there, and if you're comfortable with that, then I'm comfortable with that. But I appreciate the chairman putting this on the agenda for me to discuss, and thank you for your answers with that. And Lord willing, we'll just move forward when the time comes with it and we get some of the capital there to do that.
Yeah. I think it might be wise to say, too, that I know Commissioner Turner has been there, and certainly the school board staff. I was there last fall. The building, it is secure. It's fine. But it is extremely inconvenient for the staff, and I assume for the public too. They have to wait and all this kind of thing. And it's just, the reason for that is the way the building was constructed years ago. And I appreciate y'all turning attention to it and getting that done. That's certainly an improvement that will help down there.
Just a quick comment to that. I'm not interested in getting a long discussion on, but I would say that what we deal with now is different what they dealt with 40 years ago. We got issues with respect to safety that they never thought would be issues. So, you know, we've taken into account so much in the new school designs with respect to safety. And we've gone back and done, in most of our elementary schools, all but maybe one or two have, or all but a few have vestibules where they have to be routed through the office. And schools like David Urey, where we couldn't do that, they have a buzzer. You have to identify yourself, at which point you can get in. So we've taken seriously safety measures to protect kids. But as Commissioner Jordan said, just the schools that were designed 40 and 50 years ago just didn't have that kind of safety in mind.
Right.
But anyway, we're working as best we can to fix that issue.
And I will say that the last 8 or 9 years I've been a commissioner, y'all have made great strides. I mean, Oakland and Riverdale, I mean, all the different schools have been redesigned, changed, moved around for security reasons, and I would have never imagined 7 or 8 years ago we'd be where we are. We're just basically one school left to do.
Right.
Because Mr. Clardy's worked real hard on that, and I will commend you for the improvements you've made.
Thank you.
With pretty limited funds.
Right.
How old is David Urey?
1976.
That's still on those schools.
It's a long time
That
ago.
was just yesterday.
33 years.
Yeah.
Okay, no vote is necessary on this. Any other questions for our school board staff? And do you all have anything else? We okay?
No, sir.
All right. Sheldon, do we have anything else? Okay. Any new business Commissioner wants to bring up at this point? This would be a great time for it, since it says quite clearly here, new business.
I don't have any new business, but I've got kind of a question that maybe Mayor Burgess could help us with.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Maybe. I listened to the Budget Committee meeting the other night when the Eagleville project was talked about. And I may not have all this straight, I may not, but the Budget Committee looked like for a while they were moving in a direction to move on the Eagleville project without it coming, in my mind, without it coming through this committee. And I may have misread, or I may have heard all that wrong, and number one, that bothers me about what I think is a committee that's overstepping their boundaries without going through the proper channels. That was corrected, and I think Will headed that discussion up, but it appeared that there were a couple of members on the Budget Committee that was trying to move this project forward without it being approved or coming through this committee. Watching it on TV had issues with that. Did I misread that, or does the Budget Committee have the authority to do that?
Well, this committee right here is just a recommending committee. And so is the budget committee. Nothing can actually get done until it goes all the way to the commission. I don't know if this answers your question precisely or not, but in February of 2010, this committee passed a resolution to recommend and send forward the design, I'm not sure exactly what the words were, I didn't bring that with me, of this Eagleville expansion. Now, that was sort of out there, stayed out there, wasn't taken off the table. This committee had made that recommendation to send forward to the budget committee.
At which time the Stewart's Creek School was funded, it was tied to that.
At which time that Stewart's Creek funding was decided, and that recommendation would be heard. That doesn't mean it was going to be approved or anything else. But that, after some discussion with our county attorney and reading the actual county commission rules that we have, we felt that recommendation, that's all it was, that recommendation still was valid and still had standing. And therefore, Mr. Jordan, as the chairperson, would have to remind the budget committee of that standing and what we thought was a valid recommendation to be considered and discussed by the actual budget committee.
Just a point. It wasn't this committee, it was the prior committee.
Yeah,
And
the elections is that committee.
And that bothers me a little bit, that it was not brought up at this, that situation was not brought up at this committee meeting last month. I had two issues watching that budget committee that bothered me about what happened there. If that was the case, then once again, I'm thinking that we've got a new commission seated, a new Health and Ed committee seated, and that should have been brought up for further discussion at this committee before it was taken to the budget committee. I've got, and it might be just me, you guys, and I probably should shut up, but it should have been discussed. There was a lot of discussion about Eagleville and the Eagleville High School and Stewart's Creek High School, but that was never mentioned at this committee last month. I just thought it was a point of order that it appeared to some that was not being fully discussed in the proper committee process. And I don't know if all of this is out of order, you guys, but I just had a particular issue with that as I was watching that budget committee, and it appeared that what this committee made a decision to do was being overlooked by the budget committee. And then I caught wind of this other thing that happened last year in February and understood what was happening at that point in time. But it should have been part of that discussion. In my mind, it should have been part of that discussion in this committee last month. It should have been on the table, and we should have known what was going forward to the Budget Committee. Just my opinion, for whatever that's worth.
Well taken. Some of us should have researched and looked back and should have been more aware of what was happened in February, so that it could have been discussed at this committee level first. I think that would have been the appropriate thing to do, but it sort of didn't happen, and then when we found out that that recommendation had been made, and we felt like it at least should be made aware that that recommendation was still out there and had been made. Yes, you're right. Well, I think it should have, that should have taken place even right here during the course of the last meeting before it went to budget with the Stewart's Creek proposal and recommendation.
Okay.
So you can hold me somewhat accountable for that and for not doing enough homework to be sure what had happened previously that still was out there.
I'm not sure the end result wouldn't be identical or the same, but as I was, once again, looking at that meeting, I just had these questions that kept popping up in my mind. That we didn't talk about that. That wasn't discussed at this meeting, and how could they be making decisions that wasn't discussed at this meeting? And then the other issue came up about the prior Health and Ed Committee making that decision, and it made it a little bit more clear. So
I would think maybe steering could look at that. I mean, to throw something back on steering, how long can something hang out there from a committee? Can we say, we approve doing something at John Coleman in 2016?
No.
And in 2016, is the commission obligated to act on that? I mean, this is a different commission. I mean, you know, from a year ago, different players, different members and stuff. So I would think, and it's kind of fuzzy. You know, I think the county attorney looked at it and said, this has been approved, it needs to move forward. But I would think we could look at that and have it in print. You know, how far out you can approve something for, and if it has to come back at least for a refresher or something like that.
Well, I know for me, as a commissioner on Health and Ed, it's embarrassing for the constituents to call me or for me to read in the paper that something's moving forward and I don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a considerable amount of time going back and watching previous meetings, just trying to track back the course of action until I came to the February meeting, watched it, realized that group made a recommendation that in the spring borrowing of this year, that the recommendation for Eagle will move forward. And so it felt like this group basically was leapfrogged by a committee fully with every right to make that recommendation. But I agree, there either needs to be a process in place where we're either thoroughly familiarized, because I think you did mention, I know you mentioned it in the September meeting, that there was that recommendation on the table, but it was all of our first meetings, you know, a lot of our first meetings, and so I don't know that it sunk into me what that meant. I don't know that I really got it. And so just from the standpoint of being a commissioner who likes to make a thorough and a completely informed decision, I felt like we should have spent a little more time either thoroughly hashing out that conversation, or else we need to make a rule from steering that, you know, you can't make a decision that's going to be, you know, leapfrogged a year in advance, you know, that when you got a whole new group of players, because we have 7 new commissioners, you know, and it just, the way it played out was unfortunate, and I think it can be, I think we can do better, is my point. I think we can do better.
I think I probably need to say it at this point, and you're right, and I appreciate you remembering. Thank you so much, because I did say twice at the meeting, and if you say it was November, okay, that I considered myself obligated to present that to the Budget Committee, and then when it actually came time to do it, and the changes that were in the works were, I think, obvious to all of us, I thought, well, maybe this is not a very good idea. And so Mayor and I got together. I asked him. He checked with the county attorney, and not only was it a good idea, but I had to do it, which kind of relieved me of. I mean, I had to do it, so okay. So actually, I did it. Now, Commissioner Jordan brings up an excellent point, and that is how far in advance. But if we did something, say in May or June, and then to take place the following fall, well, then we go past the new committee appointments, and we could have a new committee or a new member every year or more. And so I don't know whether you jump over that timeline there or not. And maybe you didn't hear him, but Commissioner Jordan's exactly correct. we also had an election in there, which even changed the commission even more. So I think it's very likely that doing things very far in advance, as the Health and Ed Committee did in February of 2010, looking back on it now, was probably not a very good idea. We probably shouldn't have done that. And I don't believe I'm going to entertain that again as your chairman, but of course, I'm just one.
If that's the case,
I'm just one
let's
vote.
fund the bleachers. Let's just fund it today. Let's just do it,
Yeah.
a year or two out, so somebody
Yeah.
else takes the hit on it.
Yeah, and that's right. And you make a good point. It's a difficult situation, and I think maybe steering should look at that. I do. How far in advance can you actually commit somebody to? And maybe not past the life of that committee, which.
I think that's probably the right path, is not past the life of that committee, or however you would word that, where if there are new members that are going to be transitioning in,
Just come back through.
just,
Come back through.
exactly, just
Yeah.
bring it back through.
Something hadn't been acted upon.
Yeah,
Right.
which is Commissioner Phillips' whole point, I think, and I think well taken.
Well, and if we need to have an area on the agenda of unfinished business, so people don't lose momentum, and, they're not having to always feel like they're having to start over, because committees also don't need to get in the habit of undoing what another committee just did, or we're not gonna make any progress.
Right.
And so if there needs to be some way that we address unfinished business or projects on the table or something, so that we can bring everybody up to speed, it would have been nice, let's say when we sat down at the September meeting, to say, okay, this is where we are, these are the motions on the table, this is, catch everybody up, so that you can, keep your momentum moving forward. That's all we're trying to do.
Well, that's excellent. And what we could have done, and any member could have done this, we could have rescinded that action, which would have been fine. So I
But it's hard to
I
rescind
think.
an action you don't know exists.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yes, that's correct. I think this needs to be looked at clearly.
How would we do that with how would we reach out to them and let them consider? Because I was just thinking, as Commissioner Allen was speaking, especially with our committee, with the number of dollars you're talking about that someone can vote on a year in the past, and that just get moved through, is pretty spooky. So how would we get steering to look at that in a fairly timely manner? Just ask them, I guess.
Just put it on the agenda, and I'll see that it gets on there.
Should you make a motion to forward it?
I can make that motion to forward that recommendation to steering.
I'll second.
Mayor Burgess can help us through that process too, as it relates to what the steering committee should be looking at in the decision. It's nothing urgent, They don't have to make a decision this next month, but can begin that discussion process.
Do you need some wording on something right now? Okay,
I'm good.
All right, we're in good shape. Okay, he made a motion, so
We're going to forward this to steering for determination on how long a committee recommendation can hang, such as the recommendation from Health and Ed at the February 2010 meeting, which wasn't acting upon until after the election, and different committee appointments.
okay, what she
That's what I
said.
heard- That's what I heard him say.
That's exactly what he
That's what I
said.
meant, right.
Almost to the word.
Almost verbatim, that's right, almost to the word.
All right, I don't believe we have a second, but I will go
Yes,
for
sir, Jordan.
Okay,
Second that.
okay, thank you. You want to call the roll on that, or is,
You can do it either way.
well, let's call the roll. I like to hear you call the roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Cook?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes. Any other new business?
Get off there, I'll tell you something.
If not, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.